everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are with Adilla Munir, who is an interventionist, and she herself has been diagnosed with autism and dyslexia a late diagnosis. So today we are going to talk with her. Okay, I have some questions for you, and we'll go through the questions and we can maybe have some conversations about some of the questions. Okay. First off, can you tell us about your journey towards being diagnosed with Asperger's, ADHD, and dyslexia?
So, as usual, these diagnoses are usually masked as mental illnesses. So I went to see my psychiatrist, and actually, to this date, it's been 11 years since I've been in the psychiatric system. So there was a point of time where my psychiatrist referred to me as high functioning. I she used this word a lot. I was assuming at that point of time it was high functioning depression, and to my surprise, a year later I asked, and she actually meant high functioning autism. So once I clarified that, I went for a proper diagnosis, which confirmed the autism and ADHD. That was at 27. My
Mm,
diagnosis of dyslexia came earlier, however, at 17 years old. So yeah, autism and ADHD are often mistaken for mental health conditions, and it takes an exceptionally observant practitioner to see the picture. Thankfully, mine did.
yeah, I was diagnosed as ADHD. I think I was around 14. And, a lot, and I may have some dyslexia going on, I'm not sure. But a lot of times the teachers and things would say, "Oh, she's lazy. She doesn't apply herself," things like this. But now, as an adult, and especially because I'm an educational psychologist, I am a special education expert. I can see. I can see it's not laziness. It's not lazy at all. Sometimes we get stuck into this ADHD paralysis where we just feel we can't function, and then sometimes we get, people that have this and haven't been diagnosed with ADHD. Sometimes they get diagnosed with sometime depression or manic depression or something like that. I don't feel like I'm depressed. Um, I feel like, I know what it is. I can feel what it is. That it is the paralysis, and I have to make schedules, and I have to motivate myself to come out of the paralysis. Once I can get my foot out of the bed, then I know I can go on to finish my task for that day. I have had to learn ways to motivate myself, basically. And so I have done that. I have a son also that has been diagnosed with ADHD, and he says the same thing, that he has to follow a schedule every day. If he doesn't follow that schedule, he can't be motivated for that day. He will go into that ADHD paralysis of just scrolling on his phone, or watching videos or something like that. So it is, a lot of misdiagnosis does happen. I think when you see a person that is not motivated, the first thing you need to look at is, does that person have ADHD, or is this actually a psychiatric disorder? So we need to look at it more closely.
I believe so too, because there's so many. It masks itself in such a way that it becomes like a mental illness. It looks like a mental illness, but underneath actually it is a neurodivergence. There is that paralysis, and there is that rigidness, and there is that sensory differences that make this person look
Sensory.
so disheveled on the
Mhm.
outside. But
Yeah,
actually they need some kind of support. The support system is actually quite important in their cases.
yeah, exactly. Um, what challenges did you face growing up with an being undiagnosed?
I think the biggest challenge was feeling like a square peg in a world full of round holes. Not fitting is not fitting in is one thing, but not understanding why I didn't fit in is harder. So I did stand out, but not the good standing out in the sense that it was unconventional and people didn't like unconventional at that point of time. I think when I'm 32 at the moment, so I think my first 6 years or 7 years I could notice there was a difference, but I couldn't explain it, so it was very difficult.
Yeah, for me, um, I would say I had a lot of trouble like making friends. That was, a biggest thing is that I had lots of trouble making friends. I would say from um, maybe fourth grade on up. I made more friends once I went to high school. But in the lower elementary, junior high, I had lots of issues making friends. One of the girls that was my friend, she actually just lived across the road from me. So, we were always, I was always with her, and there was a couple of others. And I can say during those years, I had two or three, friends. It was very difficult for me to make and maintain friends. Up until the time I got into high school, I had a few more friends, but I wasn't a social butterfly. I wasn't very social at all. And I'm still not very social. I'm social to a point, but I'm not a very overly social person. So I think that was my main challenge is that I wasn't social. The teachers seemed to think that I wasn't applying myself enough, where I would be applying myself, but, I would lose focus like anything. I still lose focus. I'll be doing something, and 30 seconds later, I'll go, what was I doing? I still do that until now. So, I still lose focus a lot. So it's something that happens. And, we can say, Alhamdulillah, now we live more in a society that is trying to understand. They're trying to understand ADH better. They're trying to understand autism better. High functioning autism, still, people don't really understand it that much. Oh, he looks normal or she looks normal. We still have that stigma attached, but they don't understand. This person has so many sensory issues. They can't stand loud noises, the noise bouncing off the walls, these types of things. So, there's still that misunderstanding about people that have more high functioning autism.
People correlate high functioning as uh, a, a reason that people correlate high functioning, meaning that if you're high functioning you should be able to do almost everything that a neurotypical can do, so they don't see that trying to to do that actually requires a lot of effort in the backstage, and by the time you do the task you're actually worn down and you don't have the energy to do anything anymore. I think that's the key here, that when we talk about high functioning autism or high functioning ADHD in that sense, they people miss out that getting to the last step is actually the hardest step, and you just don't have energy to do anything at the more due to the complexity of getting to that step.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Um, how did your diagnosis change your perspective on your life and career?
I would say it was amazing to get diagnosed. It was like unlocking a secret decoder on the safe box. So finally, that you found the code after many turns, and it helped me
Yeah.
see multiple perspective. It deepened my empathy and validated my unconventional lens, because I think since I was young, I've always had empathy towards my peers that are different, but I just don't know how to explain why they're different because I wasn't educated at that point about neurodivergence. Yeah, I think masking has for many years has drained me, but it but this being have the diagnosis actually pushed me further to study psychology and furthering my masters in developmental psychology at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I see that a lot of people that when they get the diagnosis, they're not upset about the diagnosis, they feel relief. And they say, okay, now I understand all these years and all these struggles, what was actually going on. And now I'm able to relax and I'm able to understand myself better.
Agree.
Let me see the next one. What are some misconceptions about yourself that were clarified after your diagnosis?
I think the biggest misconception is my lack of eye contact. I don't make eye contact when I first meet people face to face, so friendships have been very difficult. And I do have lack of eye contact is actually is because I'm tuning out one sense to amplify another. So I'm
Hmm.
tuning out my eyes so I can amplify my hearing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so those are one of the misconceptions that I had. Then my struggles with routine, and I'm a very picky eater, and it's like autism related quirks. It's not stubbornness. So
Yeah,
yes, these help me embrace my authenticity.
yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially older diagnosed, people say that they're like, if they don't make eye contact, maybe they're rude, or if they're even if they're a picky eater and they go, like to somebody's house to eat, the people there, they don't understand why they're not eating their food, and also they think that it's kind of a rude.
Correct. I've been through that, and it was very difficult.
Okay. Um, what coping mechanisms or strategies have you developed to navigate your daily life?
I know I have a very limited social battery. So, and I know the conventional 9 to 5 schedule, which actually was based on the Industrial Revolution, does not work for me. So,
Mm.
um, so what I did is that now I work part time, and I have extra time to study. So it it gives me the satisfaction that I want, because I enjoy studying, but also I also need to find money in the end of the day. um but I think the strongest coping mechanism would be my support system, and connection with my neurodivergent peers. Is finding a common ground is actually very life changing.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree because people that understand exactly where you're coming from, that would be a good support system to have. So I completely agree with that. And that's I think some of the lectures that I've given on this channel, I have encouraged people to find supports, to find support groups, even online if they're not available within their, community, because I think those connections are really important. Okay. Um, were there specific moments or events that made you suspect that you might be a neurodivergent?
The biggest at the biggest that I can remember, the most prominent that I can remember, is that when I was 7, I started formal schooling, and I was baffled by social hierarchies, being there with uncomfortable uniform. I didn't understand why my peers were interacting in such a way, and I wondered why I felt so different. And this continued until I grew up. Of course, when I grew up, I learned how to mask, but it didn't come naturally. So that I knew that there was something different within me.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing with me. I couldn't interact very well with friends, and I had a lot of trouble interacting and making friends. So I couldn't really grasp how people could, like, be in a big group and be like friends and always be together and things like that. I remember I always had just one or two close friends, and we'd talk on the telephone, we would go to each other's houses and stuff like that, but it wasn't like we had to be together 24 hours a day. Sometimes, like in say my relationships or my marriage, I would get super clingy to the person, but along I would say along the lines of friendships, with peers and stuff, I was never really one that I could really cling to somebody, be there with them all the time. I prefer to be sitting like in my room reading a book, or something like that, doing my own activities, writing a book, or not writing a book, reading a book or something like that. So I kind of felt a lot like you. And I think that's why my parents, when I was around 14, sent me for a diagnosis, because I was not doing well in school at all, and, I was diagnosed at that time with ADD, and maybe some learning challenges or something. But, when I was in college, at the university, I wouldn't really, hang out with anybody, maybe one or two friends. We had a cafeteria near the college, and everybody used to hang out there. And I'd find one person, you know. I'd find one person to sit with, and we always had to sit at the same table to make sure, I would feel comfortable and things like that. So I wasn't very social. I mean, I tried to be social, but it's very difficult to be social when you're just, not into socialization. So I remember I used to just go to my classes. If there was a break between those classes, maybe I go to the library and read, or I would go to that restaurant to get a bite to eat. But I didn't have a crowd of people that I was hanging with and going from class to class.
Yes, I experienced the same too. I only had like one or two friends, and most of the time I spend alone or my downtime when I just needed a break. Yes, that I'll run to the washroom sometimes to get a break for myself.
Yeah. Um, how did your family, friends, or colleagues respond to your late diagnosis?
It was just like the spectrum of autism. So was the spectrum of reactions that I received. Those there were
Mm-hmm.
people that were like, "Hey, I always knew that something was different with you. I just couldn't figure
Mm-hmm.
out." The ones that were supportive were incredibly supportive. The thing is that autism actually runs in my family, but because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
female, the presentation is different. So it was masked for many years.
Yeah, I don't remember how mine acted because I was only 14, so I don't know what was discussed and what wasn't discussed. But you know, for me, it was just ADD, so I'm not sure how that was discussed. But I remember my mom going to my school and discussing it with the teachers there. Um, Do you think being a special education teacher gives you an advantage in recognizing your own neurodivergence?
Absolutely. Teaching gave me external lens to reflect on the challenges. So it's
Mm-hmm.
become like a mirror and a map for me to understand myself. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how would say the advantage that I have as a special education teacher. Even now, I'm still learning about myself at 32.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, I think it helps us to recognize things in kids earlier. Like, when a kid just walks into my office, I can usually tell almost immediately, okay, he's acting like this and this. I can start to pick it up, and then I can tell the parents, okay, I think you need to do this assessment or that assessment, because I pick it up very easily. It's just like a second nature. It's that we can kind of pick up, about the child. It's just, I think it's different for teachers that don't have some kind of neurodivergence, but I feel that the ones that do, they pick it up immediately because they recognize it. Because we've been dealing with it, our whole life, and it's like, okay, this kid, it seems like me when
Yes, it's
when
like
I was
I
a
found my
child.
tribe. Yeah, I found
Yeah,
myself. I found my tribe. I know he's part of. He's like me. Like yeah, I do get that too.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Um, how does your experience how yeah how has your experience shaped your understanding of inclusion in education?
So I've seen actually a spectrum of approaches from segregation to integration to inclusion. So we know that segregation, you segregate a group of people. Integration, you still segregate them, but you put them into a same environment where the neurotypicals are. And inclusion is where you allow them to be at the same level as everyone. True inclusion is actually quite rare and needs a very systematic change. It's about
Yeah.
equal opportunities and interaction, not just sharing a space. So that is something that is key when we talk about inclusion in education.
Hmm. Yeah, I think we have the same system here. Like the more severe cases are, excluded. They're in their own space. Kids that are able to go into mainstream schools, they go in sometimes with a shadow teacher or something like that. But they do try to practice, I think, more inclusion. Um, through the aid of shadow teachers. And so that is basically how I've seen it done here. We do have some schools that have special education sections where the child will go between. They'll go between the special education section and the mainstream school. So that's also a good way to do it, where you see that the child needs help in this area and you support that child. Okay, he can go back to class for these subjects where he's on the same level as those kids, and that's a good thing. And instead of just putting him in the special education class all day. So I like when they do that. There's only a few schools that are doing that, but I think that is a very good way to do it. Inclusion, a lot of times the child is not academically ready for that class at his age. So if you think, okay, he is say 12, he's on a grade 2 level, you don't want to put that child in a grade 2 class. It will like spoil his self-esteem and things like that. So it's better to do that route, where the child is going into special education class with kids his own age, his and in with kids they're his own level, and then coming out for classes where he can participate with the class, such as arts, some computer, music, these types of things where he is at age appropriate level, instead of just including him all the time, and then he finds himself with kids that are much younger than him, and his self-esteem, it bottles, it goes down. So I think I like the second system better, where they are included, but they are included in things with their own age group and things that they are able to do. And then otherwise, they would be with a special education teacher. I think that is a much better system.
I'm agreeable to that.
Yeah. Okay. Um, okay. What? Now I want to go on to your professional journey. What inspired you to become a special education teacher?
I wanted to revolutionize the system. So then I realized that that change have to start with me. I can't sit down and wait for other people to change the system if and when I know I have the capacity to do, even if it's just 1% out of the 100% that is needed to change the system. Because I think that 30 years ago, in Malaysia, there wasn't much recognition about autism, and people like me are wedged in between because I do academically very well. However, I do have a diverse challenge. So my teachers didn't know where to put me actually, because I would have meltdowns and shutdowns. But when it comes to exam, I do pretty good. So I could go up a grade, but it behaviorally I wasn't there yet. So yes, that's why I decided that hey, I need to change the system, and the system and it starts with me. So that's why I'm here.
Actually, the person that encouraged me was my mother. She had two friends, and one of them had a Down syndrome girl, who was actually a little bit older than me. And then she had another child that was actually severe, another lady that had a severely autistic child. So she would encourage me to go babysit for these kids when the parents needed a break. And I'd go and babysit for them. I remember the girl that had the severe autism, which at that time they said that she was severely mentally challenged. But it was, as I look back now, I recognize it as being severely autistic. So she encouraged me to babysit for these people whenever they wanted to have a break, and I did. And then, I liked working with them, especially the girl that had Down syndrome. She was fun. It was easier to teach her things and teach her rules and things because my mom would say, why don't you teach them something while you're there because these children, they have disabilities and you can help them a little bit. So that's what I did. I think at the end there was two kids with Down syndrome and one child that had autism. So I remember the other child was much younger than the girl. So my mom was actually the one that, she got me into the passion, I would say. She got me into the passion because as I developed relationships with these kids, I started to feel the passion to help other kids in the same that had also had disabilities. So it was actually my mom. It was my mom that got me, that started that fire, because she started that flame, and then it developed more into a fire. So I would say it was her.
That is amazing. That is lovely.
Yeah. How has being neurodivergent affected your teaching and your teaching methods and styles?
It made me deeply empathetic and understanding towards difficult and challenging behaviors, especially meltdowns or shutdowns or even aggression. So I didn't see just the action, but I understand the psychology behind it, the reason they are acting such a way, what is triggering them. So this insight allows me to tailor my methods to my students' unique needs. And it also helps me reflect on myself and what I would like to be treated if I was in the same situation.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think also when I was teaching, I felt more empathy for the children that were having these challenges, because it does. You're putting yourself in that student's place because you've been through it. So I remember I had three kids. I was teaching in mainstream school, first grade teacher, and they could not pick up on learning reading, just CVC words. They had the worst problem. So I took them aside, during, like, they used to have sports twice a week. So I take them during one day of the sports because, I had a free period at that time. And then I realized that one of them had dyslexia, one of the three, and the other two were just having process issues in processing the information. But after 1 month or 2 months of this, they finally picked it up and got it. But I felt for the kids because I understand the challenge they were having. And I remember in first grade, I had to be in a special group because I had the same problem in picking up the reading. I got it, but I remember my teacher, she had a special group of three kids, and there was I guess it was assistant teacher or a student teacher that was coming in every day, and she would work with us on the reading. I still can recall that. Um, so, when you've been in the same place as a student, you have more empathy and, you want to help them more. So I think that does, it makes us want to help these kids more because we have been in their shoes before. Okay. What is the most rewarding aspect of working in special education?
I would say watching my students grow to their
Yeah.
own, to see them succeed in the ways that they want to and have autonomy in their life. I mean, there are exhausting days, but seeing them thrive and advocate for themselves, I mean, that's the most amazing thing. And teaching them to love themselves and accept themselves in a world that often misunderstands them. So I think that is
Yeah.
priceless.
Yeah, yeah, I like when they accomplish something which they couldn't accomplish 6 months ago, and you see that growth and you see that you're cheering them on. You're really cheering them on because you see how they are thriving. You see them, oh, they couldn't read and now they're reading CVC words, or they couldn't do this skill and now they're able to accomplish that skill. That's the most rewarding thing for me is when I see the kids accomplishing something that they couldn't do. I feel okay. We're doing it right. We're doing it right because now they have accomplished that goal, and we can move on to new goals.
Yes, I agree with that because I think that having it's also like a motivation for us. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
we need to go through this journey together. We're doing the right thing. It's like a
Hmm.
precursor to we're doing the right thing, and I think it's an amazing experience to feel to journey with them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, what do you believe schools and teachers can do to better support neurodivergent students?
I would lay a four-step method actually, which actually have worked in the past because I do deal with a lot of neurotypical teachers that teach neurodivergent students. So I think the
Hmm.
first step is really to accept that the student's neurodivergent. There is no way around it. And the second step is educate yourself about the condition. However, do not generalize. For example, if autism, it is called a spectrum for a reason. There's so many different dimensions of presentations of how autism presents itself. Number three, grant them some autonomy to decide for themselves if they are at the age they can decide for themselves and give reasonable accommodations. And lastly, be their ally. So with these four steps, it has greatly improved the outcome in life.
Yeah, I think one of the main things is the teachers need to practice understanding, acceptance, and patience. Okay, there are so many teachers that they won't accept the diagnosis and they won't accept accommodating the diagnosis. So this is one thing is the acceptance and understanding the accommodations that the student needs to be able to complete his task and to grow. That is one of the main things, and patience with the child. So many students, teachers, they don't have patience. Once they hear that this child has an issue, they don't want to work with the child. I have been in many classrooms where I have seen a child that has some kind of challenge just chucked to the back of the classroom and given busy work, as we call it. They should be in the front of the classroom, in front of the teacher, so that the teacher can keep the child on task. Accept the accommodations that a psychiatrist or a psychologist, or an expert gives, because that is in place to help the child. So this is some of the challenges that I have personally faced with, teachers not wanting to give the accommodations. Oh, it's too difficult. Movement breaks. Kids with ADHD and a lot of times with autism, they need movement breaks. It helps the concentration. They need to get out of their seat, move around, go down the hall to get a drink of water. Just move for 2 minutes. It doesn't take much effort to let them to go and get a drink of water after each 45-minute class. So these are the things that I have seen that needs to be done. They need to accept it. They need to be patient. They need to be understanding.
in the root of being understanding, it actually makes their work more simple rather than difficult. Because if the child is not cooperative in that sense, in their words, not cooperative, of course the teacher's task is difficult. But if you give them accommodations and they can respond and be included in class, that will be easier
Yeah,
for everybody, including the
yeah.
teacher.
I mean, it's like, you have a child that has a lot of sensory issues. Okay, they need the headphones. Not allowing them to have the headphones. Why? What is the reason behind that? Okay, they need accommodations to be able to go to a quiet place. You can make a quiet place in the library. A lot of schools have set that up. Why aren't you allowing them to go to that quiet place? Not now. He can wait 5 minutes until I finish the class. I actually know a parent that's going through that right now, is that the child has accommodations, and if the child feels like he's going to have a meltdown, he tells the teacher, and he's supposed to be allowed to go to the library where they have a quiet place set up. But the one of the teachers is not allowing that. So why? You want the child to have a meltdown in the middle of your class instead of allowing him to go to the safe spot, they call it. It makes no sense. It's not logical. Why are you wanting him to have a meltdown in the middle of the class? If you let him to go to that safe space, okay, he won't have a meltdown. Just accommodate the child. The child feels it. He feels that he's going to have a meltdown. Let him go to that safe place. And then once he's calm and cooled down, he'll come back to the classroom. It's not a big deal. So what? He misses 5 minutes. He misses 10 minutes. He can get the notes or the worksheets later on.
Yes, that I agree a lot with that.
Yeah. Okay. Um, what challenges have you faced as in the educational field as a neurodivergent teacher?
I think for myself, if I speak for myself, it's actually managing my social battery. So back to back classes can be very overstimulating for me. Even as a teacher, you get exhausted. So I've learned to take breaks. So when I am in need of a break, I know to call another teacher that, hey, can you cover me for 5 minutes? I need to go to the washroom. Or and there was one center that I worked with earlier in my career. They actually had a snoozelen room, and it was very nice. It was a fully equipped snoozelen room with all the lights and all the things to calm you down. So and it will be not occupied. It won't be occupied during break time, because as the students will go for lunch instead of therapy. So I will use that room. But to make the other teachers understand, I need that space, and I don't want to have like conversations or anything at that time or period of time. It
Mhm.
was very difficult to establish that boundary.
Yeah, yeah. I think mine was just socializing with other teachers, having to socialize, going to events where there was a lot of noise and a lot of, you know, things going on. I think that was mine. Okay. Um, what advice do you have for other educators who are neurodivergent?
I would say the first thing is be your student's ally. Manage your social battery and remember your purpose. We're here to change lives. We may not be doctors that can really change lives in emergencies, but this is how we change lives through education. So, and struggling is part of the process. To make change, resistance is how we grow. So really, stay put and put your foot down when you make a decision, and be sure that you're making the right choices.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with all of that. And they and know your boundaries as well. Um, don't let other people to overstep, your boundaries. Okay. How do you balance advocating for neurodivergent students and managing your own needs?
To me, self care is non-negotiable. So I need the self care. Set the boundaries. So what I do is that I dedicate one day of the week to unplug from work. Work stays at work. So that's my rule. Work doesn't come back home unless it's an
Yeah.
emergency. Then I can respond to it. But work is work. When they are at home, their parents can support them in that sense. If we educate the parents well enough to support them, so that's an
Mhm.
avenue for advocacy and teaching.
Yeah, I kind of do the same thing is that I have one day a week where I will not look at my business phone. I have my private phone that my family can get in touch with me. And I have that one week where I put it on airplane mode and I won't look at it. And I will do things that I want to do, such as read a book, visit with my family, or something like that. It's that one day that is my calming down day.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
and I
have that
think we need
too.
that. We need that. I don't think it's only neurodivergent people that need that, but I think a lot of people need that. You have lots of people that are overworked,
It
but
should be
I think,
normalized, you
yeah,
know.
it should be normalized because for me, and also, in the evening, I usually won't answer messages if it's business messages. I just leave them till the next morning. I won't open them. If it's my kids or something like that, I of course I'm going to look at it and answer it. But if it's just something for business, usually after say 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the evening, I won't respond to it. And I think we need to do that. We don't need to be responding to messages at 2 o'clock in the morning. I actually have people that message me at 2 o'clock in the morning. My phone is always on vibrate. I don't have any ringtone on my business phone. On my private phone, I have a ringtone. But on my business phone, I do not have any ringtone because somebody will wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning you know, asking about our center. And I'm like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Why are people, asking about our services at 2 o'clock in the morning? So for me, by 7 or 8 o'clock, I won't even look at the business messages on WhatsApp. Unless it's something that I'm planning with somebody, like with you or my kids or something like that. But as far as my office or the center goes, after 8 o'clock, no way. I'm not going to answer you. Okay. Um, how do you? That's already a stop. Can you share a success story from your teaching experience? Your teaching experiences that is close to your heart.
So, as a junior teacher, when I first started my career, I was given this case of a child. He was about 7 years old, and he lost his speech around 6. So he was speaking before that. Around 7, he regressed and lost his speech. So I was his shadow for a year, and after that, I left the job for another career. However, I came back to that school just for observation, and I saw this child, and he made so much improvement. He was verbal. He got his speech back. He has friends. Even though there are not many, there's one or two that really care for him, and to see that joy in his life, and to know that I was once a part of his life is amazing, and it's a
Hmm.
joy that I'll forever take with me when I do my teaching and consultation.
Yeah, that's a nice story. It really is. Um, okay, now I want to talk about AIM High, which is Autism Initiatives Malaysia High. Okay, what inspired you to join AIM High?
Um, the inspiration was a random inspiration around 2 a.m. in the morning. I decided that, hey, I need to find a community of people like me. So I googled up in Google, and Aim High came up in Facebook. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just reach out to them and see what they're doing. After a few years with them, and now I'm the president of the term.
That's so cool. That's really, you've really accomplished something good in being in that organization. Um, what is Aim High and what is their mission and how does it stand out from other organizations?
So Aim High, our mission is actually to be a platform of advocacy and a platform for understanding and awareness for level 1 autistic or high functioning autism or Asperger syndrome. What makes us unique, we're actually autistic led and professionally supported. So we have members that are passionate advocates. We also are guided by our dedicated mentors and an advisor that puts and makes sure we have a safe space to express ourselves and advocate for ourselves. So we are in that sense we are not we have some guidelines in terms of um some kind of safe space to be around.
Yeah, it sounds like a really great organization. I think every place they need an organization where people with autism, the high functioning ones, can um, be a part of something, where they are running this organization because it lets other people understand how they feel, how they process information, and things like that. So it's really good that it's run by people with autism. Okay. What types of programs or services does Aim High offer?
We have support groups, namely our Aim High Women Support Group. We have something called Aim High at Campus, which is actually our what they call it our group of people that we will address things like transitioning to university or difficulties at university. We also have our working adult support group. Apart from that, every 2 months we have a webinar that is featured by experts discussing topics curated for our members.
Oh, that's excellent. That's really, really, an excellent initiative. Um, who are the who are the primary beneficiaries of Aim High's work?
Up to date, we would say the autistic adults, especially the high functioning and level 1 and Asperger syndrome, because we do take in the diagnosis. Asperger's was once the diagnosis, and high functioning was once the diagnosis before they changed it to level 1 in DSM-5. So those are the primary beneficiaries of Aim High's work.
Okay. Um, how does Aim High advocate for inclusion and acceptance in Malaysia?
I would highlight one of our key achievements is in aim through aim high at campus. We actually had a university and university autism roundtable and forum. So we had 4 autistic adults that were going through university or had gone through university to share about their challenges. And we also had 2 sections where we had researchers explain the landscape of autism in university in Malaysia and outside of Malaysia. So that event was actually a success. We had about 130 people attending that were from the higher education, that were from there were psychologists, there were educators, there were disability liaison officers, there were counselors. So it was such a high demand that we actually did a second round a few months later.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's really good. Um, how does Aim High advocate for inclusion and acceptance in Malaysia?
I would say it does that through our various programs, and those programs would target specific groups. For example, the women support group, we target the women's because there is a difficulty for ladies to get a diagnosis if we look on a
Yeah,
global scale. Then
yeah,
we highlight those in working or those are in university and college.
yeah, because women they mask more, so they are more experienced in masking their symptoms. So yeah, you're right. They're a lot more. They are the one that don't get diagnosed most. Um, what challenges did you face in running Aim High?
I think the biggest challenge was people told us we were not inclusive enough. We had feedback saying that, hey, aim high is not inclusive enough because one of our key key rule for our membership is actually they need to be level one Asperger's or high functioning autism. And people were saying that what about the level twos and level threes? What about the so moderate and severe? So we had a lot of criticism about not being inclusive. However, we to rectify that is that there are lots of groups in Malaysia that support level twos, level threes, and they have been longer than us in the industry. So and our challenges as being as level one or high functioning autistic or Asperger's are very unique, and I think we deserve a dedicated space. So that's what we're advocating for.
Yeah, I agree with that actually, because there's very little awareness about level one autism or Asperger's, whatever you want to call it. And I think those people that are level one, they do need a space to communicate with each other, to understand each other's challenges and things. I think this is a great initiative. My son, he has a lot of problems finding people to connect with. So I think that this is a great initiative, and there needs to be more initiatives around for those that are level one or Asperger syndrome. Um, can you share a story about a family or individual that AIM High has impacted?
I would like to share about myself actually. That will be the key thing that because I know because I experienced it. Aim High
Mhm.
has given me a sense of belonging and opportunities to connect to other professionals and peers. It's not just an organization. It's more than that. It's a movement, and I'm very grateful to be part of this movement.
Yeah, okay. Um, how does your personal journey influence the work you do at AIM High?
I think it reminds me and makes me aware that even though in the level one itself, autism is so multidimensional, it presents itself in so many different ways,
Yeah,
and there are so many approaches to one unique challenge. For example, somebody can be hypersensitive or hyposensitive, and they still be in the level one scene or category. So this journey has shaped how I advocate and how I support others and how I support myself in that process. Because it's all about
yeah,
peer thing. Yes.
yeah. You can have two level ones that are polar opposite. you know
Yes.
so just because you're level one, the person next to you is level one, but you might be completely 100% opposite. So autism doesn't present it's the same way in different people. So yeah, that's 100% correct. um how does your personal journey influence the work you do at AIM High?
So the personal journey has allowed me to really understand how autism is and how different autistics react to things. So it allows me to be more empathetic and it allows me to be more understanding and more open to what actually is rather than sticking to that DSM-5 definition of what autism is.
Yeah, right. um What role does community support play in AIM High's initiatives?
To us, community is everything. We wouldn't be here without the community itself. So our members and collaborators have shaped it to what it is today, and obviously they're part of the community. So, and we're not a one-man show. We are a group of people that is also supported by a group of people. So it is community in action.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these organizations, they need the community. They need community to come out and to be a part of them and help them. What are some of the future goals or projects for AIM High?
So for 2025, we are expanding the topics that we have covered. As we have covered transitioning to higher education, we'll delve into that more deeply. And transitioning to employment is something that we are looking into uh, to touch that area more deeply. It reflects on the growing needs of our members as they grow, because we have very young members that are going through all this and they need the support. So we said, okay, we can provide the support for them.
Yeah, I think employment initiatives for people with autism, that's also an important goal that you probably need.
Agree very much.
Okay. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about awareness.
Sorry, I lost you.
Like there's some kind of connection issue. Um, what misconceptions about autism, ADHD, or dyslexia do you want to address in your work?
Primarily that the idea that we cannot integrate in society. I think you'll be very surprised. The doctor that treats you is probably autistic. The engineer that coded your computer is probably ADHD. You know, the teacher that teaching
Mhm.
your child is probably has dyslexia or some learning difficulties. Through lived experience, they learn how to mask. However, they are invisible. We are in society. We are there. So to know that that misconception that we cannot be in society, that we should be segregated from society, is something that I want to address through my work.
Yeah, yeah, right. Because this is exactly right. They sometimes they think that these conditions are like diseases or something, and we just sit in our houses or whatever. But you're right. I mean, person with ADHD can be hyper focused, and they're really good at these hands-on, like computer type of things. I mean, we people with neurodivergence, they are working all through life in different fields. So we're not just hiding away someplace.
Agree.
Um, yeah. How can society better support neurodivergent individuals in Malaysia and other countries?
I would say by acknowledging we exist and shifting from that mentality that we're so disabled, we cannot integrate in society. We are these people that are in the houses not doing anything, so we are not disorders to fix, we are people to include.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I remember years ago, people thought people with dyslexia were mentally challenged, and that they're not. They're absolutely not. Just having dyslexia has nothing to do with intelligence. So, I remember this years and years ago that this was the mentality of people, teachers and everything. But we can say Alhamdulillah, in these times, the thinking and the understanding and the awareness has changed a lot. Let me see. How do you hope Aim High will contribute to the global conversation about neurodiversity?
I hope aim high will contribute to the global conversation about neurodiversity, that autism is actually a spectrum, so there are so many dimensions towards it, and it's important to actually have a dedicated space for those who are high functioning level 1 Asperger syndrome, so they can thrive. So with the right support, everybody can flourish in life.
Yes, exactly. What is one piece of advice or encouragement that you would like to leave with our listeners?
Oh, if you are neurodivergent, to be honest, seek support. Seek the support that you need. You deserve the support. And there are communities, for example, in Malaysia, like Aim High, that exist to help you. Life is tough, but remember, you are tougher.
Yes, yes. Keep going, and whatever kinds issues you have, you can succeed. You just need to be patient, and you can do it. Okay, thank you. So, oh, wait a minute. We have a question. Let's show it. A comment. I think the solution of awareness, conferences at school, and education for teachers. Also, teaching teachers how to teach a child with autism, and in the typical school is a must. I agree 100% with Dora. Yes, teachers teaching in schools need to learn more about neurodivergent kids. I 100% agree with her. A lot of times we have issues where, like I said earlier, that the teachers are not willing to give the accommodations to the kids that they actually need. Like, the example of the child that has meltdowns and not allowing them to go to a safe space. And what they'd rather have the child have a big meltdown in the middle of the class instead of allowing the child to go to a safe space. So I think she's right about this. Teachers need to understand that this is a child that has a neurodivergent issue, and they need to allow the accommodations that have been recommended for that child. This is an issue that is very prevalent in the school systems, that they don't give the child the accommodations. Teachers need to realize that the accommodations have been put in place for a reason. A lot of time the accommodations have been put in place so the child won't have a meltdown inside the classroom. So, the teachers need to be sensitive to this issue. I'm not saying wait 5 minutes until the class finishes. No, the child can't wait 5 minutes, because within that 5 minutes, that child is going to have a meltdown in the middle of your classroom.
Agree. For that question, I would say that awareness can be built through conferences at school. In fact, through the parent-teacher conference, we could even build awareness and build a community that understands these people. And teaching teachers how to teach those students, I think, also empowers the teachers. It supports the teachers because in most conditions, the teachers are not supported themselves. So it's a bidirectional support. We're supporting the students and the teachers at the same time, and it helps everybody in the process.
Yeah, in some cases that I've seen is that the administration is supporting the parents, but at the end of the day, it's the parent it's the teacher that is not willing to give that accommodation, even though the administration has gone back and told them you need to give the accommodation to this child. So in that case, the teacher, in my opinion, if the teacher is not following the recommendations from psychologists, psychiatrists, not listening to the administration that this child needs the accommodation, the teacher needs to be released. The teacher doesn't need to be there. That is my opinion. And I would not accept any teacher on my staff that was not listening to the administration, because the administration is telling them, okay, this child has this issue. They need these accommodations. And the teachers go, oh, well, I don't want to do these accommodations. It interrupts my day. No, that teacher needs to be released. She shouldn't be there if she cannot give the child the accommodations that they need.
I agree with that because I think part of teaching is actually a give and take environment where you give education, but at the same time you give breaks and you give chances to people. And but if they're persistently not following the direction or advice that has been given, especially by a psychiatrist, psychologist, a counselor, or somebody in the education that really knows the gravity of the situation, I think that is a problem that we need to address as soon as possible before it creates more harm.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that, and as that is finished, we are finished with our live stream. Thank you everybody for joining, and inshallah we'll have Adilla on again, hopefully with Miss Sheila. And until next time, see you in the next video.